This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Tuesday, May 28th of 2024. We're so glad you can join us for today's show. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. In today's episode, I will run down the latest Iowa Ag News headlines, including some updates from the Iowa Ag Water Alliance, as well as another update on the position of sustainable aviation fuel. But first, let's take a look at the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day in the ag marketplace, we're here with Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net. Ross, we just got back from a long 3-day weekend for Memorial Day. First off, what are the grains doing today after they processed that long weekend?
The grain markets wasted no time last night, starting off sharply higher, primarily driven off of the wheat complex. Wheat was up, I think it was like 15 cents right away on the opening between Chicago and Kansas City. Traded, it was over 20 cents higher before, really, it reversed course and closed. I think Chicago wheat was about 17 to 18 cents off of its overnight highs. Ended the day 5 to 6 higher. Kansas City was around 12 cents higher. But the corn and bean market, they rallied on the start last night. They were each about 5 cents higher. Really, you can say just kind of in sympathy for the corn and bean markets as wheat was having its sharp rally. In corn and beans, both reversed course and closed lower, with soybeans really leading the way down. July beans were around 18 cents lower on the day. The new crop beans, November, was only around 8 cents lower, and corn was 2 to 3 lower across the corn market.
So just one of the things about having that long 3-day weekend, obviously a lot of news to process since then. And that's actually more of a thing we'll get with the livestock later because they had a bit of news to process. But looking over the weekend in general with the grain markets, when we're looking at this point in planting season and the weather and everything, how much is the weather impacting right now? Because we did get that rain, but obviously there's been a lot of weather challenges here, especially in Iowa, to deal with on that.
Yeah, there has been, and we'll get to see the planning progress at 3 o'clock here today. And for the most part, I think we're going to see some very good progress that was made across the corn and bean country. And I think the planning delays or planning progress that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, I think that's really going to be in our rearview mirror as we move forward here. Today's progress for corn's estimated, the average guess is 86%. We were 89% last year at this time, and the 5-year average is 82%. So if we come in at 86, we're going to be not quite as ahead of last year's pace, but ahead of the 5-year average. And for soybeans, looking at 70% versus 78% last year, and the 5-year average is 63%. So beans are similar to corn, ahead of the 5-year average, and they'll be sitting in good shape here if those numbers come in around there, which I think they will. I think we've seen really good progress.
And then, like I was saying earlier, livestock markets had a lot to digest over the weekend. Of course, the cattle and feed report coming out on Friday, and then they had the whole weekend to digest that, getting back in today. So what have we seen in the livestock markets throughout today?
We had a sharply higher day of trade across the feeder cattle market. Live cattle, they had a solid day as well. June live cattle were 85 cents higher. August fats were 70 higher. Over in feeders, though, August feeders were 437 higher. The September feeder contract was 370 higher. Like you said, no shortage of news to digest. We had the cattle on feed report that was released at 2 p.m. on Friday. And the report by itself came in neutral versus the average trade guesses. On feed was 99.1 versus the guess was 99.1. Placements was 94.2. The guesses were 93.3. And the marketing's number came in at 110.1 versus the average guess was 109.5. So the report versus the numbers, you can call it neutral. In the big picture, in my opinion, it's a bullish report. This was the first cattle on feed report that we've seen the on feed number fall versus the year ago number. So it's the first report we've had where the on feed was lower in 8 months. You'd have to go back to the September report. So there's no question that numbers are tighter. We're not at the tightest spot. I think you got to get out into 25 and possibly even the first part of 26 before we're going to see the tightest numbers. But numbers are tight right now. Cash trades evidencing that. We had cash trade to new all-time highs up here in the north this last week, 192 to 193 live picked up. There was some 304 addressed, these are new all-time highs. But while the numbers have been tight, I think we're getting to the point where the rubber is going to start to meet the road on the numbers getting tighter as we work through the back half of this year. So there's definitely a lot of bullish optimism across the cattle markets, and rightfully so. I know there's plenty of people hoping that we can trade some 195 live here this week, and I would be in the camp that we can see that. So the cattle market, we've shrugged off some recent headlines. The USDA released also on Friday after the markets closed. Well, Reuters broke the news story that there was some particles of avian influenza found in some tissue from some dairy cows that they sampled. There was 95 dairy cows that were sampled. 94 of them were negative for it. There was one that had viral particles found in the tissue. Now these cows, they had been condemned, so they never made it to the supply chain. The process is working that the USDA has in place that contaminated meat doesn't hit the supply chain, and the consumers have nothing to worry about there. But we had to deal with that headline that came out also, and the market shrugged it off again. So it continues to shrug off these headlines with avian influenza. And I think the recent test that we saw here a few weeks ago, where they injected avian influenza into ground beef and cooked it, and the cooking process takes out the avian influenza to where it's safe to eat. I think that's really gave the market, a lot of ease for right now. So those headlines continue to be out here. They don't appear to be going away, but for the time being, the market seems fairly content with what we've seen with avian influenza and beef.
All right, Ross, lots of great information today. For those of our listeners and our viewers who would like to get in touch and learn more from the folks at agmarket.net, how can they do that?
You can reach me at our office here in Anthon. Our number is 712-373-3276, or you can find any of the Ag Market brokers at agmarket.net.
Great talking with you as always, Ross, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Riley. Have a good one.
That again was Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net. We'll take a look at how the numbers closed through the market window at iowaagnet.com.
At the close, July corn down 2 1/4 at 462.5. July soybeans down 18.5 at 1229.5. July soybean meal down 9.90 at 376.60. July soybean oil up 57 cents at 45.52. Chicago wheat up 3 even at $7.25. Kansas City hard red wheat up 10 even at 731 1/4. Minneapolis spring wheat up 4 3/4 at 757 1/2. July oats up 1 1/4 at 377 even. On the Merc, June live cattle up 85 cents at 184.55. August feeders up 437 at 264.60. June lean hogs down 47 cents at 93.80. Pork cutout down 125 at 102.25. And June class 3 milk down 39 cents at 19.50.
And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. And when we come back, I have the latest Iowa Ag News headlines. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Time now to take a look at the latest Iowa Ag News headlines. Starting off, Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Mike Nag and Dr. Jason Henderson of Iowa State University Extension and Outreach have been named to leadership roles on the Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance's Advisory Council. Secretary Nag and Dr. Henderson as the Advisory Council's chair and vice chair, respectively, will lead an impactful and dedicated group of public and nonprofit organizations. The group shares the common vision of increasing the pace and scale of on-farm water quality practices and reaching Iowa nutrient reduction strategy goals. Under Secretary Nagg's leadership, the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship has placed great priority on farmer-led nutrient reduction and water quality practices statewide. From the Water Quality Initiative to co-leadership on two major federal regional conservation partnership program projects with IAWA, expansion of the batch and build model, and more. Dr. Henderson is recognized nationwide for his expertise in agricultural and rural issues, including ag economics. He will bring key insights and experience to the Advisory Council as Vice Chair. Both Secretary Nagg and Dr. Henderson expressed their enthusiasm for their new leadership positions on the Advisory Council during their inaugural meeting today. In other news, Sustainable Aviation Fuel Coalition's Executive Director Allison Grab welcomed Farm Bill markup and inclusion of sustainable aviation provisions on the bill. Grab says, quote, "The provisions of the bill affirming sustainable aviation fuel as an advanced biofuel and providing for greater USDA collaboration regarding sustainable aviation fuel underscore the significant role of SAF. SAF made from renewable biomass and waste resources have the potential to deliver the performance and petroleum-based jet fuel, but with a fraction of its carbon footprint, giving airlines solid footing for decoupling greenhouse gas emissions from flight, according to the U.S. Department of Energy. By growing biomass crops for sustainable aviation fuel production, American farmers can earn more money during off-seasons by providing feedstocks to this new market, while also securing benefits for their farms, like reducing nutrient losses and improving soil quality. The Sustainable Aviation Coalition represents the entirety of the sustainable aviation fuel value chain. And finally, lawmakers recently advanced the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act out of subcommittee. The House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Innovation, Data, and Commerce is marked up and passed the legislation for full committee consideration. The action follows a subcommittee hearing on April 30th and mirrors the draft legislative language that was the focus of the hearing. Representatives from National Association of Farm Broadcasting and the National Association of Broadcasting attended that hearing. During Thursday's markup, Representative Debbie Dingell, a Michigan Democrat, noticed that automakers are ready to commit to voluntarily keeping AM radio in vehicles, but added, quote, "I also think AM radio should be in cars as well as trucks, boats, agriculture, and recreational vehicles. I think we need to study those issues," end quote. Legislation to require AM radio as a safety feature in all vehicles currently has 61 co-sponsors in the Senate and 254 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. And that's all we have for the news headlines today. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And you can find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free opening, midday, and closing market podcasts, as well as our Iowa Ag Matters podcast and Pods of Potential. You can find those wherever you find your favorite podcast service at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.